Mesdames et messieurs, bonsoir, and welcome to this environment line art tutorial. Check it out. For this demonstration, I started with a preliminary sketch. I usually start directly with the line art and improvise a bit, but I didn't want to mess up the video and take too much time coming up with an interesting image. The first thing to notice here is that I'm not using the brush tool, I'm using the pencil tool, which is a technique that I picked up by studying artists such as Kilian Eng or Guy Worley. After learning and messing around with a more painterly, traditional concept art style for the last 2 years, I really wanted to draw with a more personal style, and I realized that what fulfilled me the most was to draw like when I was a kid or a teenager, with lines. I have very fond memories of drawing on the corners of my school books or the tables when I was in middle school and high school, and I wanted to bring back that feeling. I like lines. I know that a lot of concept artists prefer to block shapes instead of doing line art, but I realized that I actually feel closer to this kind of comic book cartoon style. So I don't know if you see it, but I actually don't put a lot of pressure on the pen. One would think that it doesn't change anything, because my pencil tool doesn't have any opacity or size jitter associated with the pen pressure. But drawing light-handed allows me to easily create those jiggly, broken lines that you can see. This is just my own preference. Some artists that do line art prefer to have strong, very clear, full lines with no gaps or holes, but I really like the effect that it gives. It allows your brain to imagine a texture that isn't there. What I love about drawing environments is that you need to organize your different elements in a way that it looks chaotic. It's like instead of cleaning your room, you purposely and carefully place your dirty clothes and other objects in a way that it looks as messed up as possible. And it's not as easy as it sounds, because it has to look random and organic. Some people are paid to do that on movie or TV sets, for example. As human beings, we like symmetry and organized shapes. Nature does not. So to properly represent nature, you need to go against your instincts. So now that I have the overall outline of the scene, I'm starting to add details. One thing that is very important is to pay attention to the direction of the lines. In this case, we don't work with light or colors or even values, so the direction of your lines will be vital to indicate the shapes of the different elements of the scene. For example, straight lines are very useful to tell the viewer that it's a very steep cliff. Think about it like that. The lines are wrapping up around the shapes of the rocks. You can even draw some guidelines and use them to create textures. Now, architecture is definitely not my biggest strength, so I decided to draw an old ruined tower. This allows me to not pay so much attention to straight lines or perfect perspective. I can be a bit looser and still be able to represent a building. That's a useful trick. Also, adding windows on the tower is a really helpful way to give information on the scale. I drew moss on the rocks for 2 reasons. The first one, the more obvious, is to add some variety and texture to my drawing. The second one is that it helps with storytelling. Why? Because moss on rocks is an indicator of non-polluted areas. So unconsciously, you think of this place as being remote, far from civilization, in a forsaken place or uncharted territory. So when you design an environment, try to think about the semantics, which is basically the study of meanings. A simple thing such as adding moss can add a lot of depth to your drawing. You'll notice that I only use 2 sizes for the pencil tool. I use the smaller size to add some details, such as additional cracks or moss and vegetation, but you are free to use as much different sizes as you want. In fact, I recommend using more than 2. It will help you add some variety and texture to your drawing. Now, the problem with the pencil tool is that you're basically drawing with pixels like in Microsoft Paint. So when you zoom in, it's very ugly and pixelated. To avoid that, you need to use a very big canvas. My canvas here is 7-200 by 5-400, but I encourage you to go even bigger than that, especially if you have a good computer. Of course, if you zoom in 100% on a big canvas, it will still be pixelated. The only difference is that you will never see your drawing as zoomed in, so you will always have the impression of an extremely clean line art. I could easily spend days adding little details everywhere, but don't forget that your drawing needs to breathe. Don't be afraid to leave some white space. It's hard for me because I really enjoy the process, but it's important to keep that in mind. And I'm just finishing up the piece by adding birds and clouds, which is also very helpful to give a sense of scale. Also, I'm adding some planets to add a taste of fantasy or sci-fi, just to enhance the fact that we are in another world. So this is a sketch we started with at the beginning, and this is what we have now. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't hesitate to comment if you have any question. I will also share with you the PSD file if you're interested to check it out. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon.